Hello and welcome to our weekly Parsha Shir with the commentary of the Alshich Kodesh. I must apologize for the fact that this shir is very late. It's usually on a Thursday night, but on this Thursday night, I was supposed to be getting on a Delta flight, or rather, Virgin Atlantic flight through Delta to fly to England because I have got a brand new grandson and I was very keen to be there for the brief. But apparently, Virgin Atlantic were very keen that I did not get there because even though the British government has only announced today, and this is Sunday, PCR tests are required, Virgin required that. I got that bit. But even though the Delta site said that the British government had no entry qualifications at the moment, when I arrived, Virgin anticipated, or rather expected me to have filled out a passenger locator form. And the passenger locator form tells the British government where you are and what you're staying and what your gender is and all that sort of stuff. It's about 14 pages to fill out online. I have to tell you, trying to fill out anything online is difficult enough, but on an iPhone, it was very, very difficult. And halfway through, it said, "What is the code word or the password, whatever, for your day 2 COVID test when you enter the UK?" This is not what the Delta site said about British government having no requirements. And so I had to try and fill that out online as well. I was there 2.5 hours early. It took me about an hour and a half to try to fill these forms out on my iPhone. Eventually I succeeded. I got to the gate and they weighed my bags and then told me I was 10 minutes too late. And there's no way they could get me on the flight, which was going in 40 minutes' time. In other words, there was a way to get me on the flight, but they just couldn't be bothered. So hooray for Virgin and Richard Branson, and I didn't get to go. So I'm afraid there was not scheduled to be a share this week, but I'm here on Sunday night, and I thought maybe we could do it anyway. As usual, sponsorship for the share is available if you want to celebrate a happy event. And I think I'd like to celebrate a happy event because this is my 17th wedding anniversary. And they say, as I said when I posted this on Facebook, they say that it is second marriages are very difficult. And I suppose that's definitely true. However, if you think about it, what pleasure do you ever take in achievement which was easy? It's when it's difficult and you've achieved it and you reach, the stage where you're celebrating very happily, you and your wife, a 17th wedding anniversary, that the whole thing was you feel good. Anyway, so I'm dedicating this cheer to my wife. If you'd like to dedicate this cheer to your wife or to your husband for a bar mitzvah, a simcha, a wedding, to commemorate somebody who's passed away, then as usual, please just be in touch. And it's yy@rabbiyyy.com, yy@rabbiyyy.com, and we'll be very happy to dedicate it for you. This week is the story of Vayeshev, or rather last week, but let's pretend it's this week. Anyway, it's sort of Vayeshev, but really Vayeshev and the parsha that comes after that, Miketz, really are joined at the hip. They're a continuation of the same story. And the theme that runs through them from the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev to the end of Parshas Vayeshev is dreams. It's all about the concept of dreams and dreamers. And of course, that leads us into Miketz when it's Paro dreaming his famous dream, which leads to the freeing of Yosef from the bar, from the prison in which he has been incarcerated. So I thought it would be interesting, even though this year is a standalone share, but the theme of dreams will carry us and connect us to next week's share. So there's 2 share on the parshas, but both dealing with dreams. And dreams is something which Judaism takes very seriously. That when you daven and shul on the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, one of the prayers we say is during the Kohanim blessing us is, if there is a bad dream that I've had, it should not come true. If I've dreamt about myself, or if I've dreamt about somebody else, it should not come true. If somebody's dreamt about me, something bad, it shouldn't come true. And if it's something good, it should come true. We take dreams very, very seriously. And the question, I suppose, is why does Hashem make us dream? What is the purpose and function of dreams? Before we get to that, I want to tell you about Rabbi Desta. Of course, this is basically going to be the Alshich. However, I'm going to focus particularly in the Alshich next week with just snippets of them in this week, because we really have to set the scene of what dreams are all about. Now, the beginning of the Pasha are the dreams, of course, of Yosef, which he tells his brothers, which seems to exacerbate the enmity between them. At the end of the Parsha of Vayeshev, it's the dreams of the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Oifim, the fellow in charge of the wine production and supply for Pharaoh's table and the bread for Pharaoh's table. These are officers of state, very powerful positions. And of course, they both dream dreams which nobody can interpret them. And Yosef does, and that's nearly leads to him being taken out of prison. We have to wait for next week's parsha to get to that stage. But what is the purpose and function of dreams? Now, we talked about this last year when we did the first series of the Alshich. But again, I think it's important to come back to this because I say dreams is going to be the main thrust of what we're looking at. And so Rabbi Dessler, in the fourth parak of Michtam Eliyahu, he asks the question, why is it that we dream? Well, it's obvious that it could be that Hashem made it that we don't dream. But as it is the case that he made us that we do dream, why? Why does he do that? If we didn't have to. There must be clearly a function, and a function that relates to our role, our spiritual role, our interaction with God, which is somehow or other tied up with dreams. So what's the purpose and function? So this is Rabbi Dessler on page 164 of Mitzvah Eliyahu in the fourth volume. So he starts off with the words, Matoras HaCholim, the purpose, the ambition, the function of a dream. So it has an ambition, it's there for a purpose and a function. Legalis is Hurhuri Liba Hatzaponim Shel Adam, is to reveal the hidden aspects of a person's personality which he might not be aware of. And of course, that parts of the personality that exist at the subconscious level, we're obviously very rarely aware of. So this Hainu es Hatzofan Betosa HaKorah Shaloi. It lies below the level of a person's self-awareness, the subconscious. And the reason that the dream is going to reveal that aspect of your personality, that aspect of who you are to you, is in order you can do teshuva, you can fix yourself, you can remedy yourself. Now, one of the greatest Kabbalists of all time was, of course, the Arizal, and he died as a young man in his 30s. He said his only reason that he came into the world was to teach his great Talmud, Reb Chaim Vital. And incidentally, the Alshich was a teacher of both the Arizal and Reb Chaim Vital. And Reb Chaim Vital, in his Sefer Shari Kedusha, says in the first chapter, I think twice, he emphasizes that a bad character trait, a bad midah, is much worse than any individual any individual sin that you might have done, for the very simple reason it is the source of the sins that you might do, the damage that you would do to other people, the selfishness you'll display towards other people. And therefore, if you can get your personality, your character traits straightened out, then the things you do wrong will simply fall away. So it's this idea of discovering who and what you are, even at the subconscious level, is in order to, as it were, perfect you and to do tshuva, in other words, to reconnect with God, which is all about. So a dream apparently will address the character traits that you might not be aware of at the subconscious level. And then Rabbi Dessler says, and this is very interesting, Rabbi Dessler says that when it comes to a dream, it can be there to reveal you something negative about yourself, which is operating, indeed, at the subconscious level, but needs to be addressed. Because, of course, even though it's the subconscious level, doesn't mean to say it's not going to erupt in conscious behavior, which we've alluded to already. Therefore, sometimes you will see this in a dream. There'll be a hint to this part of your nature, which is subconscious, but lies there latently and waiting to erupt in order for you to put it right. But why in the form of a dream? Well, the answer is really very simple. And I think everybody listening to this or watching this will certainly be aware of the fact that each and every one of us is very, very vulnerable and very, very sensitive to the concept of criticism. We're not very good at either giving criticism, and the Talmud says nobody knows, even though criticizing constructive criticism is a mitzvah in the Torah, it's called toichacha, but nobody knows how to do toichacha, constructive criticism properly, and nobody knows how to accept or receive it properly. So as we don't do criticism well, and just think for a second and pause, if I say to you, imagine or remember the last time somebody said to me, the problem with you, what's your normal reaction I think my normal reaction is, oh, sorry, hold on a second. You're going to tell me what the problem is with me? Let me tell you the problem with you. Of course, this is a defense mechanism. Um, Obviously, everybody's got problems, but if he's going to give me a lecture on my problems, well, let me start off by giving him a lecture on mine. But what I'm really trying to do is make sure I don't hear it, because we don't like hearing criticisms of ourselves, which are vulnerable. There's a lot to say on why that's the case. However, in order to, as it were, overcome the barrier of the rejection or the possible rejection of criticism, suppose you get a glimpse into who and what you are, and that glimpse is in the form of a dream. Now, Rashi says that a dream is a 60th of prophecy, a 60th of prophecy. Now, the number, the fraction of the 60th is something which features very, very often in Jewish law. You probably know that if there's a drop of milk falls into a meaty pot, now let's say a cholent, and there's 60 times meat to the milk, the drop of milk, then it's kosher. It overwhelms it. But 60th is the stage at which the last tangibility of that milk could be detected. So a dream is a 60th, says Rashi, quoting the Talmud in Brachos and Nunheinu and Vav. It's a 60th of prophecy. Wow. That is to say, we don't have prophecy anymore, but whenever Hashem removes something from the world which he created, he leaves a bit of it there, a tiny bit of it there, as it were, a fingerprint. And there's a 60th of prophecy remains in the world, and that can be in the form of a dream. A dream can be a glimpse into the future, which is something we're all extremely keen on, particularly if it was able to show us next week's winning lottery numbers. Although, frankly, I'm not sure that would be a good thing, but never mind. Anyway, but it's a 60th of prophecy. So when you see in a dream something negative about yourself, but let's reconsider that. If a 60th, the dream is a 60th of prophecy, that means 59/60th, the vast majority of the fraction, is nothing to do with prophecy. In fact, it's usually nonsense. In fact, if you remember your last dream, it's all nonsense. It's surreal. It's crazy stuff. And as a consequence, because it's mostly nonsense, it's not so confrontational. The message of the dream is hidden in a whole, Hebrew is bilbul, a cacophony of imagery and impossible scenarios. But there is something there that might be tangibly and accurately appropriate to you. So I usually give the example of you dream, or I dream of flying through the clouds, or flying through the air. I come to some candy cotton clouds, candy floss in the UK clouds. I fly through these candy clouds. Below there is a chocolate island in a chocolate lake. I land on the chocolate island, and it's got M&Ms, an M&M tree, and I want a bag of M&Ms. This of course only works for those who don't have to have supervised milk. But anyway, it's a dream. So I go to grab the bag of M&Ms, and my little brother rushes up to grab it instead of me, and I push him into the lake. And then I grab the M&Ms, and that's a chocolate lake, incidentally. And then I fly up to the clouds, and I carry on my journey, whatever I was doing. Obviously, just surreal nonsense. However, leaving the Alice in Wonderland scenario behind, just perhaps if I reference Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, that's not such a bad idea, because even though it's a very surreal book, and Alice's adventures are certainly very surreal, talking cats, etc. But as Lewis Carroll was a mathematician, there is a lot of real science and real mathematics in the story. There is an element of truth, even in the impossible tale of Alice's falling down the rabbit hole. So in the course of waking up in the morning, I would recall perhaps the dream, or rather perhaps an element of the dream. And then, of course, the normal thing is it just disappears like the morning mist. But it could be that even though I can't remember it clearly, my late mum, bless her, she had a phrase which was, "That broke my dream." That broke my dream. What she meant was she dreamt about something. She'd forgotten, as we often do, that we have dreamt about something. But the next day, when she wakes up and she goes about her business, something in real life would remind her of the fact she dreamt about that. Maybe she dreamt about a bus, then she gets on a bus. Oh, you remember the bus? Oh, I dreamt about that. She called it, "That breaks my dream." And actually, I have the same phenomenon in my life as well. I often find myself repeating my mother's words, that broke my dream. In other words, it's still there. The memory, the experience is still latent, it's still in my mind. It just needed a trigger to remind me of the fact. And therefore I can re-access it. So if I remember, let's say there's a bar of chocolate and I remember this dream, and then this thought could come back to me. Would I push my brother or somebody I loved aside just because I wanted something? And that would be a hint that maybe there's a strain of selfishness that operates at the subconscious level that I should be conscious about and deal with. So the first reason that a person can dream or might dream is in order to be shown something within himself or herself which is bad or negative, which needs to be addressed. The next reason Rabbi Dessa says that a person dreams is not in order to show them something negative about themselves, but to show them something positive about themselves. Show them something positive about themselves. And that's a very interesting thought, because so very often a person does not realize that they have greatness and potential within themselves. And sometimes they're encouraged to doubt or disbelieve that they have any potential by others, maybe bad teachers or even bad parents. But the dream can show the person that they have potential and really there's greatness, and they dream something great about themselves. And again, when they wake up, either consciously or subconsciously, there is that memory just whispering in the background, you could be great. And that might encourage the person to actually become great. And then the third reason is the one I mentioned before that people get extraordinarily interested in, and that is a glimpse into the future. In fact, I know somebody who's a rabbi, and one night he had an incredibly horrible nightmare. One of these nightmares that wake you up in the cold sweat. I woke up, he was extremely distressed. I couldn't understand why he'd had this dream because it was so upsetting. But in the dream, he dreamt that his teenage daughter, her bedroom was just a couple of doors down in the hallway, had drowned. So he wanted to wake his wife up to tell her the story, but when he looks over, he saw that she was already awake, and she wasn't looking. She was looking quite distressed herself. And she said to him, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, I had a horrible dream. Are you okay?" "No," she said, "I've had a terrible nightmare." She dreamt that her teenage daughter in the bedroom a couple of doors down had drowned. They both dreamt the exact same thing at the exact same time. So, of course, a mother and a father who both dreamt, imagine that's an experience. They rushed in to make sure their daughter was okay. And indeed, their daughter was fine, apart from the nightmare she just had that she drowned. So 3 dreaming the exact same dream on the same night. Mother, father, and a daughter. So they went to see a famous rabbi called Moshe Shapiro, who passed away. He's one of the great Talmidim of Rabbi Dessler, Mixed with Leon. They told him the story, and he said, "Mistamas is just probably it's nonsense, but you should give charity anyway," which is the standard reaction when you've had a bad dream, give charity. So, but they carried on having that dream for apparently a year before it subsided and disappeared. And the Talmud talks about people having simultaneous dreams, identical simultaneous dreams. 2 rabbis called Abai and Rava, who had simultaneous dreams. So there is such a phenomenon, which the Talmud is very, very much aware of. But if we go back to the 3 reasons that Rabbi Dessa says a person dreams, to discover something negative about yourself, or to discover something positive about yourself, or to be a glimpse of a possible future, either a positive one, which is positive or negative, then at that point, we'd have to, I think, come to the conclusion that all 3 are linked by a common denominator. That is to say, they're all invitations to change. And that's why Rabbi Dessa says the purpose of the dream is to do teshuva, to reconnect with God. You're being shown something negative about yourself in order to change, to address that and change it. That'll bring you closer to God. You are shown something positive in yourself in order to change, right? And come closer to God because you're now realizing potential and going in a more positive way, doing greater things. Or it could be a glimpse of a positive or a negative future, which if you realize, again, you will change. They're all invitations to change. So that's the reason behind dreams. Although, even though Rabbi Dessa cites those 3, there is a 4th reason, which the Talmud talks about. And as I say, it's in Brachos, in this the pages that talk about this. And the Talmud says the following thing: Almale Kizali Rabbi Shir bar Chanina. Rabbi Shir bar Chanina was famously engaged constantly in negotiations with Rome. And one day Caesar said to him the following thing: Omrita de Chachmita Tuva. It's said about you Jews that you're very clever. Now, I don't know if you've interacted in the non-Jewish world, went to a non-Jewish school perhaps, but you will know there's a strong likelihood if a non-Jewish person says, you Jews think you're so clever, that it's the precursor to something that comes next, which could easily be a punch in the nose. But here's Caesar, the most powerful man in the world, turning around and saying to this rabbi, you Jews think you're so clever. You're supposed to be so clever. But then he said, instead of a punch in the nose, well, a verbal punch to the solar plexus might be the best description. If you're so clever, tell me what I'm going to dream about tonight. Now, I don't know what your reaction would be if the most powerful man in the world, who, when he says stuff, expects a good answer, asked you that question. I think my reaction would be, mommy, and call out to your mother for help. But he didn't blink. He immediately said, "Oh, okay." He said, "You're going to dream that your nemesis, the king of Persia, because it was two giant empires, the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, who struggled, each one trying to dominate the other, a bit like the East and the West during the Cold War. Never, it was sort of like a tug of war back and forth. Sometimes one would win and then lose, and vice versa. Never dominating and never just defeating the other." So he says, you're going to imagine that the Persian king, your nemesis, defeats you, captures you, makes you into a slave, and your job is to attend to his pigs. He's going to give you a gold staff, a gold stick, to carry out your job as a swineherd. So that's the dream that this Rabbi Shir bar Chanina told to Caesar. But the Gemara says an interesting thing. He said to him, upon hearing this disturbing interpretation of the dream, he thought about it all day long. Well, it worked at nighttime. Chaza, that's exactly what he dreamt about. Another reason for dreams: if you're thinking about something all day long, then you're very, very likely to dream about it when it comes at night. And that almost is, something that doesn't make sense. Almost seems silly. However, when we get to our parsha in a second, we'll see that it's actually very, very critical to understand what's going on. Let me read a little bit of Rabbi Desta to you. He says in page 165, why is it that we dream tam, devorim, batin, bachan? Why is the 59/60ths of a dream all nonsense? When we said that a dream is a 60th of prophecy, the Zohar says, there are 6 levels of prophecy until you get to the lowest one, which we said, the 60th, which is a dream. Now he's going to all sorts of Kabbalistic thought. There are what's called spheres, dimensions of godliness, I suppose you would say. Ki me'anetzach, the dimension, the spiritual dimension is called netzach. Yunkas hanavua, nevuah comes from that, whatever that means. We don't need to worry too much about this. Ad Gavriel, until they get to the Malach Gavriel, the angel Gavriel. Darga HaCholam, and he's in charge of dreams. So I want to know who brings you dreams. It's a Malach, an angel called Gavriel. Himvov, Medregas, Vahim, Netzach, Hoid, Soid, Malchus, Atzilus. So these are the 6 levels of dreams, of Sephiras, spirituality. Bria Yitzira comes to the 6th one. And Al Hagechel Harotz and Shasham Gavriel. Now you find Gavriel. Now, he says, that nevuah exists in the world, but it's above the world. It doesn't belong to this world. It comes from heaven. It's an insight from heaven, an insight to the future. You don't normally see into the future in this world, but through prophecy you do. So it's something that comes to this world that doesn't actually normally belong here. But a dream exists in the world of Bechira, in the world of choice. As we said before, the purpose of dreams is to be given a message which you will choose, hopefully, to listen to and to change. So a dream is a sniff of prophecy, the last remaining tangible amount of prophecy, but it's here in this world. Normal prophecy comes from outside, but it's in the world. You dream when you're asleep in this world. Why is it part of this world? Because it's there for you to choose whether to pay attention to the dream and change or not. Okay, there's no such thing as a consequence because it belongs and is of this world that isn't full of garbage and nonsense as well. So real, Alice Downey, Alice in the Looking Glass, etc. Not only that, there's no such thing as a dream which cannot be interpreted either negatively or positively, one way or the other. I know Masha Amachazan, that's what the Gemara says in Brachas. It's noon, hey, we're back to Brachas. Ein cholam beloy devar matin. There's no such thing as a dream which isn't full of nonsense. Ki b'yoysa cholam be'oinam ha'bechira, muchrosh tehiyah boy teruvas toivarav. Because a dream belongs and is part of this world, in everything in this world, there is negative and positive. Negative and positive in human beings like you and I, negative and positive in the things that we eat. The body retains the positive, ejects the negative, negative and positive in everything in the world. And that applies to dreams then as well. The positive is the message, the negative is all the nonsense. That's the nature of a world of choice. Two, negative and positive. But the foreign material could even all this 59 60th is in order to hide the truth so that you can choose to find the truth. And the purpose and function of the person is to choose to look for the message behind the sheker, behind the nonsense, which of course is our journey in the world as well. In the conscious world, in the awake world, but also in the subconscious world, and the sleeping world. Okay, now here is an important idea. If I was a prophet, which I'm not, but remember, a dream is only a glimpse, only a sniff, a 60th of real prophecy of Nevi'us. But suppose I was a real Navi, and suppose I said to you, you know what? You're going to die tonight. Should you be worried? Well, my answer, surprisingly, is yes and no. After all, I'm a Navi. But if a Navi, and here's the rule, and this is quoting the Rambam says, Maimonides famously says, when he talks about this is in the Side Torah, Zion and Ches, if a Navi says something good is going to happen, it must happen. But if a prophet says something bad's going to happen, it may happen. Give you that again. If a Navi says something good's going to happen, it must happen. But if it doesn't, he's a false prophet. And if he says something bad's going to happen, it might happen. It doesn't have to, because God could change what the prophecy says because you reacted positively to the prophecy and changed. And therefore, the person who had the prophecy was going to die as a consequence of his behavior and his character flaws is no longer that person. So therefore, the sentence of the court, as it were, no longer applies. And there's even a case by which a person hasn't changed at all. And many times in Jewish history, Jewish people didn't get the message, but still God lets them off because God is rachamim, God is mercy. So there is a concept of it being a 60th of prophecy, but even if it was real prophecy, it doesn't mean that it has to come true. Now, the coming true thing is going to be very important. Let's now look, now we're going over to the Alshich, at the Parsha. Now, I think we're all familiar with this story. I'm not going to read all of it, but Yosef is in prison, and the Sarah Mashkin and Sarah Ophim are in prison as well. Let me read a little bit there, and then there's a Rashi here which I would like us to go into, and then we'll move to the beginning of the Parsha, certainly through the eyes of the Alshich, and have a look at how prophecy works there. Before I do that, let me just tell you that prophecy and the ability to look into the future, which sounds such a gift, and I made the joke, or not quite a joke, but I made the comment before, that it'd be great if you could see the winning lottery ticket numbers of next week. Not necessarily so. And I'm sure in the past you've heard me say that it's not necessarily a good thing that you would become very rich. In fact, there are many books since they brought in lotteries, state lotteries, national lotteries, telling the life stories of people who were just ordinary people, plumbers, joiners, accountants even, and lawyers with a certain amount of income. And maybe a handsome income, but when they're given massive income, it destroyed them, destroyed their marriages, destroyed their whole quality of life. So I'm not terribly sure it'd be a good thing. But certainly the ability to look into the future in and of itself is, like all things, a two-edged sword and could be a disaster and extremely toxic. For example, when Korach launches his rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the reasons the rabbis say is because he could look into the future. Because he looked into the future, he saw that there was going to be a man and men born from him who would teach Torah in Yerushalayim. He therefore concluded he was bound to win this argument, and that's what made him pursue it. But only look into the future and make your calculations accordingly if you see the whole picture of the future. What he didn't realize is children were going to actually side with Moshe Rabbeinu in this debate. And that's why he would have children who would be teaching in the future Torah in Yerushalayim, because they separated themselves from his perspective and from his rebellion. And he was misled by only seeing a bit of it. Or when the spies go in to spy out the land of Israel and bring back a terrible report. Why did they do that? So according to the Chasam Sofer and other opinions, it's because they could look into the future. And looking into the future, they saw that their jobs, their positions of leadership, which existed in the desert prior to them going into the land of Israel, when they looked into the future, they saw other people occupying those roles. And they concluded, therefore, we'll lose our jobs. So that's why they were biased to bring back a bad report. They didn't want to lose their jobs. But of course, if only they hadn't looked into the future, they would have brought back a good report. And if they brought back a good report, there would not have been other people who would have taken over those roles, because they wouldn't have died as a consequence of bringing back the bad reports. Looking into the future is very, very dangerous. But let me just go and read to you a little bit here. So, Yosef brings them there, comes to them in the morning. That's the Sarah Mashkim, that's Sarah Eifim, the government minister of wine production and bread production. But Yar Eisam and they are downcast. But Yishal es Sarisi Paro, and they say to the Sarisi Paro, to the officers of Paro, Asher Itzai Mishvar Beis Adonav, which are in prison with him, Lemar Madua Penechem Roim Hayom. I said, why are you so upset? The Yomra Ilov Chalam Chalamnu. We have dreamt a dream of Poser in Itoi. And nobody can interpret it for us. Now, I think, we'll see in a second, the Alshich is going to say that, I think there is a problem here, as that people get this translation wrong. And I'm sure that's exactly how they said to him, we dreamt a dream, and there's no interpreter for it. It doesn't just mean interpreter. It means somebody who's going to tell me what it means is going to happen. The word poiser means somebody who'll tell me what's going to happen. What's the dream foretelling is my fate. Not just, oh, the dream means, this is what it means. Oh, I've done my job. No, it's telling me what's happening here. This is predictive, right? What's going to come out from this? Nobody tells what's going to happen from these dreams. Yosef, doesn't God, and I'm sure this is how they translate this here, so let me just see this. Okay, so Joseph said to him, do not interpretations belong to God, relate it to me if you please. And that's the bit I want to fight with, or rather I think the Alshich wants to fight with, and Alshich wants to fight with, with too. You see, because what he means, when Yosef says to them, isn't the interpretation of all dreams doesn't lie with God? Tell me. Sorry, you God then? You're Hashem. What does that mean? You just said it lies with God, and you're not God. So what's it talking about? That's because the translation's wrong. It doesn't mean the interpretation lies with God. Whether the message, the interpretation of the dream will come true, that lies with God. But if you tell me what the dream is, I'll be able to say what the interpretation of the dream is. But whether it comes true or not, that depends on God. As we said before, a dream, a prophet, a real prophet, who can tell you what the dream means might not come true. It might not come true because God might change his mind because you've done teshuvah, or because he's just found some overwhelming reason to cancel the sentence that previously had been given to you. That's what they're upset about. And Rashi actually says that. If I can just read to you the Rashi, it says, each one told his dream, an ishke pisran cholome, called echod cholam lecholam hadoime lepisran. Each one dreamt a dream that was doime lepisran, exactly like what actually happened. So pisran means what actually happened also in the future, what's going to happen in the future and come to them. And that's the point here. They're saying nobody can interpret and tell us what's going to happen. So Yosef says, what's going to happen? That's God's department. But if you tell me what the dream says it says is going to happen, that I can tell you. But I can't tell you that even though it says it's going to happen, it will happen, because God might make it not happen for all sorts of reasons. Now, we're going to come back to this next week, because we're going to link this to the dream of Paro. But I will try and point out to you that the dream of the Sar Hamashkim contains only 2 or 3 elements which actually came out in his life. He did squeeze, as it were, the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and give them to him. That's right. But the other thing about the tendrils and all that stuff, that had nothing to do with him. So the real question is, what's that all about? The Sarah Oifim, he says to him, I dreamt I was carrying a basket of bread to Pharaoh's table, and birds flew down and ate from the topmost basket. Says Yosef, they ate from the topmost basket. He only reported 1 basket, and that's right, there were 3. That bit, none of that came true. So the question is, what was that message about? Well, we'll get to that next week. But let's look back at the beginning of the parsha. So the beginning of the parsha, and remember, dreams are prophecy. And when Joseph has his dream, that's different to you and I having a dream, because that's only a sniff of prophecy. Joseph is a prophet, and so are his brothers. And again, to go back to the Rambam says that when somebody dreams a dream and they're a prophet, and the prophetic message is in the dream. How God communicates with a prophet in general is that he goes into a trance during the day, or at nighttime he has a dream. And depending on the spiritual level of the prophet, then the dream is less surreal, less Alice in Wonderland, and it's more accurate. It's more, just like a video. That's when the dream is, depending on the level of the prophet. The lower the level, the more he's connected to this world, and therefore the more sheker and nonsense there is in it. Of course, that doesn't apply to Moshe Rabbeinu, because he didn't get any dreams. He got direct visions, direct contact by God. God spoke to him and he heard, the same way as you're hearing or seeing me. That's how, as it were, not quite seeing, but that's how Moshe connected to God. It was direct, and he could actually pick up the phone and talk to God, which nobody else could do. So there's a totally different category of experience for Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy to everybody else, as the Rambam explains there. So therefore, here's the problem. Now we know that there's enmity between the brothers, the coat of many colors, and we've talked about that in the past, which was the coat of many colors, but doesn't matter. Vayachlam Yosef Chalam. Well, after Yaakov makes him the coat, the brothers get very angry about. It says, Vayachlam Yosef Chalam, and Joseph dreamt a dream. He told it to his brothers, and they hated him more. And he said to them, listen to this dream that I dreamt. We were binding sheaves of corn in the middle of the field. My sheaf of corn rose higher than yours. Stood erect. And your sheaf of corn surrounded my sheaf of corn and bowed down to my sheaf of corn. Now, the reaction of the brothers here is really interesting. Let's see what comes next. But Yomer Loy Echav, the brother said to him, will you be a king over us? Will you rule over us? And they hated him even more, for his dreams and for his words. Now, the reaction of the brothers here is very, very strange, because they're all prophets. Imagine we were all research scientists working in oncology, and we're trying to find a breakthrough in the cure for cancer, or for cancer, at least a cancer, if not all. And suppose I rush in with papers in my hand saying, I've got a breakthrough. Wow, fellow scientists, I've got a breakthrough. And this is what you've been working your whole life, or been working as a team on this. When you want to know what it is, when you think you're jealous of me, right? You want to know what it is so you can refute it. But they just reject this out of hand. The brothers reject it out of hand, but they're prophets. In the same way, surely a scientist should be interested in a breakthrough, at least what the person is claiming to be the breakthrough, cold fusion or whatever, then that would be something you would expect them to be interested in, but they reject this out of hand. Why do they reject it out of hand? Second thing is they reverse the order. He said, we were binding sheaves of corn in the dream, binding sheaves of corn in the field. My sheaf of corn was higher than yours. Okay, who's about to do that, right? Those who are watching this, right? 3 small sheaves of corn, right? And mine's higher than yours. And then your sheaves of corn come and surround mine and bow down. Right? So let's do that again. Sorry, wasn't before. My sheaf of corn was higher than yours. And then it says, it's to direct, and your sheaves of corn surrounded mine and bowed down to mine. Who do you bow down to? You bow down to a king. But mine's higher than yours means I'm the leader, I'm the boss. You bow down to a king. But the interesting thing is they turn around and say, will you be a king over us? I'll do that the other way around. Will you be a king over us? Will you be a king over us? And will you rule over us? So they start off with the king bit. And then they say, and will you be higher than us? Why did they change the order of the dream as he told it to them? He said, I'll be higher than you and you'll bow down to me, so I'll be a king over you. They said, will you be a king over us? Or will you bow down to us? And they hate him more for his dreams and for his words. So the question is, question number 2, why did they change the order? And question number 3 is in this end of the pasuk. They hated him for his words and for his dreams. The other way about, they hated him for his dreams and his words. Now that's where we'll start. So the Alshich says, what do you mean his dreams? Let's read that story again. From pasuk Hey, right at the beginning, Yosef Chalam, and Joseph dreamt a dream, singular. The Yagid Le'echov, and he told his brother, and he hated him. Instead of being research scientists interested in his findings, or prophets interested in what prophecy would be. Listen to this dream, singular, that I dreamt. So twice he's emphasized it's a dream, singular. But they hated him for his dreams? They hated him for his dreams? He only told him one dream. The Alshich has got brilliant insight here. And the brilliant insight is as follows. He says to them that I'm going to be higher than you and you're going to bow down to me. They say, oh, they focus and they change the order. We're going to bow down to you. You're going to be a king. And they reject. That's why they reject this as being a possibility of being authentic prophecy that they have to pay attention to. Why? It's simple. You can't be the king of 10 people. Binyamin's at home. There are 12 sons altogether. Apart from Vayeshev, that means 10 brothers, who he said is going to bow down to him. And this is nonsense, because you can't be the king. It says you're going to be king to you. That's why they focus on that one first. Your dream says you're going to be a king. You can't be the king of 10 people. You can be the boss. You can be the leader. You can't be a king. For a king, you would need a city-state like Athens in ancient Greece or Sparta or somewhere like that. You could be a king of a country, but you can't be the king of 10 people. It makes no sense. As that bit makes no sense, that you're going to be the king over us, the other bit can't make any sense either. You're going to rule over us. After this can't be prophecy. What is it? They hate him for his dreams. He dreams in the plural. He only dreamt one dream. No. Remember the story we read from the Gemara of Rabbi Shua when Caesar said to him, tell me what I'm going to dream about tonight. He told him the dream that you're going to be conquered and turned into a pig herd, a swine herd for the Persian king. And he thought about that all day long and he dreamt about that at night. That's the dreams. The fact you're dreaming about being the king over us is because that's what you're dreaming about, daydreaming about, planning, plotting, hoping for during the day. When Martin Luther King, in his famous speech, which incidentally he gave hundreds and hundreds of times before the one that we've all probably seen in the newsreels, when he said, I have a dream, Martin Luther King was not saying that he'd fallen asleep. He was saying an ambition, a plan, a hope. That's what they're saying. The fact that you've dreamt this, which can't possibly be prophecy because you can't be the king of dead people, and that's the whole thing is nonsense, is the product of what you're thinking about all day long, is reawakening itself in your subconscious mind as a dream. That's why they hate him. Of course, what the brothers didn't see, and it's the same flaw as I mentioned before for those who are able to look into the future. A dream is a glimpse of the future, or prophecy is certainly a glimpse of the future. But only so you see the whole picture. What the brothers omitted to see was the fact that Joseph was going to become the king of Egypt as a direct consequence of them, as they're about to do, selling him. And as the king of Egypt, they would bow down to him. Every aspect of the dream would actually come true. So that's an introduction to what the Alshich has to say on the subject of dreams. But I'd like to take us back at the beginning of next week's share to the interesting interpretation that Yosef offers the dreams of Sarah Mashkin and Sarah Leifim, which will lead us in turn into, through the brilliant eyes of the Alshich, the strange dream of Paro and his reluctance to accept the interpretation of his own dream interpreters. And we'll do that, so we'll join two shirim together. And I hope you forgive me for being late this week, and I wish you a very good week until we get together next Erev Shabbos, and hopefully have this up on Thursday as usual. Have a great week.